All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to dive right into it. We are here today is Tuesday, January 7th. We're here for our second Capital Improvement Program work session here, a joint one with the school committee. But first order of business, as always, pledge of allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land in which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. All right, before we dive into it, I do want to wish Councilmember Mike Marin happy birthday. We are very happy and fortunate that he's willing to spend his birthday evening with us tonight.
We got work to do.
All right, with that said, we're going to hand it over to the superintendent. We're going to dive right into it. Discussion regarding capital improvement program, fiscal year 25-26 through 2030-2031. Take it away.
Before you start, could I just noticing that there's not public comment on the agenda. It's fine that it was left off, if it was left off. Since there are people in the public, could we just talk about, one, that we would welcome public comment, and perhaps we could say something like, at 8:30, wherever we are in the conversation, we stop, let people talk, so that they, one, can anticipate a chance to talk, and they're not waiting till 10 o'clock to talk, and that way, there are a few people here, maybe that would just, people would know in their head, I'm going to be here till 8:30, and then I'm going to get a chance to talk and then move on.
Yeah, we plan to open it up to for public comment. Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak at a certain point in the meeting, we're going to allow for the presentation to be complete before we do open it up. And there will be some discussion between council members, school committee, administration, and we'll try to fit public comment in
So
as necessary. Go ahead.
Right, but I would rather just, it's much like when we have a meeting, we take a break, and we do 30 minutes of public comment. If people came out and wanted to speak, to know you're only waiting until 8:30, wherever we are, we'll pause. I would assume we'll be through the presentation and let people know when they can speak, unless you want to say you're going to wait here till 9 o'clock. I don't care what time.
I want to wait till we complete the presentation, have some discussion, then open it up. I mean, we're not just going to stop the presentation and open it up.
I didn't say that, but I'm just asking so that if people take time out to come, they know when they might speak, instead of 10:30, like last night we were here till 11.
Well, we don't have a 100-page document presentation tonight, so I anticipate the presentation will be concluded fairly sooner than what it was last night, allowing people in the audience to speak much sooner than they would have last night.
How long is a reasonable expectation for this presentation to be made, do you think?
I don't. Go ahead.
I'll give you an hour.
An hour?
That's a reasonable
okay.
expectation, yeah.
So right
Perhaps
now it
less.
is 10 past 7, and in 1 hour it'll be 10 past 8, so that would give us 20 minutes.
Just to pause, there's 6 people here. I'm just saying, if you were a person in the public, if you've attended a public meeting.
I think.
Go ahead.
I don't have any objection to people from the public speaking, but we don't have legal counsel for the town or the school committee here. We're flexible with amending the agenda to add it. You are not. Was this noticed as a school committee meeting? Does it say public comment on it?
No, it does not. Okay.
I think you got an OMA issue.
I don't think it's an OMA issue, but that being said, in the future, this budget process, multiple meetings, was all prescribed according to the charter, right? A group of citizens amended the charter so that we could have the budget process operate differently. We wouldn't have the financial town meeting, we would have these series of meetings, and if they're open to the public, I'm just confused on where the opportunity is for the public to ask a question or say something. I don't have any, I just want, if I were coming to any public meeting, I would want to know when and if I was going to be able to speak. That's all. Not a
Well,
big
it sounds
question.
like we maybe can add that to future things, but tonight we would not be allowed to do that because of concern that there might be an OMA violation, and we do not have legal counsel. So I certainly am not opposed to adding that to, future things. And I do think that agreeing on a certain time is worthwhile.
Logical.
So, I do note that there is one member of the public here this evening, and that there's, there's just a couple of people. But I do appreciate your point.
I'm just trying to be kinder to the community who has sat through very long meetings and never gotten to speak or spoken at 11 o'clock. So I'm just trying to make a small change. But
Right, yeah, I don't think there's any problem with that.
I think we're all in agreement that public comment's important, and that we all want to honor public comment for the public. Councilwoman Bergner, I would say that if you could take this up with the town manager in future meetings, that would be a way to fix it. But at the moment, I think we should get back to business, and so like the council president said, we will make some time for it later after the presentation.
I will note that in every other work session I've had, we have had public comment. During COVID, we had public comment.
So again, we intend to open up for public comment at the conclusion of the presentation at the discretion of the members up here, not putting a fixed time to it. Those in the audience who wish to speak, you will have an opportunity to speak tonight, but the quicker we get to the presentation, the quicker those in the audience will have the ability to speak. So, Superintendent, let's take it away.
So before you hand it over to our superintendent, I just want to let everyone know our CIP plan is in draft form tonight. We have not had a chance to vote on it officially. We plan to do that at our next meeting next Tuesday. We don't anticipate any changes from what you'll see tonight, but I did want to make that clear.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Good evening, Council President McEntee, honorable members of the Town Council, School Committee Chair Vetter, honorable members of the School Committee, Town Manager Manny, and valued community members. There are two. Members of South Kingstown. This evening's Capital Improvement Program, aka CIP presentation you are about to receive stems primarily from the recommendations made in the 2022 Facilities Condition Assessment, or FCA. While many recommendations are made in that assessment and useful to the CIP, I would be remiss if I did not note in advance of this presentation that those recommendations are a critical component to the districts and towns stage 1 and 2 applications, and purposefully contain an abundance of recommendations that help set the stage for projects that, with RIDE approval, become eligible for reimbursement. With this being said, and while much work has been done already on this plan, in the spirit of collaboration and consistent improvement that we are committed to achieving both in this and future budget cycles, we are open and prepared to take feedback on the draft CIP from this evening's meeting and have robust discussion before the school committee at our next meeting on Tuesday, and respond if and as needed prior to the CIP public hearing and adoption on Monday, January 27th. At this point, it is my pleasure to introduce those who do the yeoman's work in both creating and implementing the capital improvement program for South Kingstown School Department, and those who will present on the matters posted in tonight's agenda: Chief Financial Officer Mr. Ryan Kilpatrick, Director of Facilities and Transportation Mr. Brian Mahoney, and Director of Technology Mr. Douglas Snow.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It is my pleasure to kick off our discussion of the school department's capital improvement program for fiscal years 2026 through 2031, with an emphasis on fiscal year 2026, and we can go ahead and dive right in. So our bottom line up front here, as our superintendent mentioned earlier, our facilities master plan is primarily based on the facilities condition assessment conducted in 2022 by Studio Jade as part of the Stage 1 necessity of school construction process. That process identified approximately $41 million of possible repairs and maintenance across the district's properties. A more current facilities condition assessment was conducted this past October by third-party contractor Bureau Veritas, and we are awaiting the results of that study. And we do expect that that study will identify some new projects and needs across the district. All projects listed in the master plan are subject to change based on shifting priorities, demographics, and funding availability, and as such, they are representative of the district's needs rather than comprehensive. And finally, the district is not currently requesting additional funds from the town council to finance any of the projects you'll see tonight.
Can I interrupt you really quickly and request that folks turn their microphones off because there's a crazy echo coming from the reverb? Thank you.
No worries. Good to go? All right. Speaking of funding, we'll move now to our discussion of funding sources. This is the third slide. So in recent years, we have been financing our capital projects from two primary sources. The first is reappropriated fund balance, which represents either a transfer from our general fund into our capital fund or utilizing available fund balance already within that capital fund. So for fiscal year 2025, we're using $1,163,133. The second is federal grant revenue from the Federal Communications Commission. This grant provides significant discounts for purchasing technology equipment to enhance our wireless capabilities, and those revenues are realized through reimbursements in succeeding fiscal years. And for fiscal year 2025, our current fiscal year, we expect to receive $46,992 in these revenues. We also have one additional revenue source in fiscal year 25, which is an insurance reimbursement from the Rhode Island Interlocal Risk Management Trust to replace a generator that failed at Peacedale Elementary School. And again, we are not currently requesting any additional funds from the town council at this time for any of these projects. And with that, we will move into the specific projects we plan to complete in the following fiscal years, starting with technology. And so now I'd like to hand it over to our Director of Technology, Mr. Doug Snow.
Good evening. Douglas Snow, Director of Technology. I think this is my 24th year with the school system. So gone through this a few times. If you look through mine, and most of the time it's the one-to-one laptops that we've been rolling out. We're kind of decreasing in price because of our enrollment, but the laptops have increased a little in price themselves. So we're starting with the second grade, then the ninth grade gets a refurbished, basically a uplift from the eighth grade because they've basically been using them for about 7 years. We're starting to change our models a little bit. The middle school is not one-to-one. They're basically back into the carts in the classroom. A lot of that was the breakage was incredibly high in the middle schools. Elementary school, even the high school has been fantastic with breakage. I think I always praise the parents because they're taking them home and using them every day, and they're still doing very well. The model of laptop we bought has been fantastic too. Very ruggedized, lasting longer than we've expected a lot of these things. So breakage is way down. That's been basically keeping us going for spares and things like that. So we're almost self-sufficient, self-contained for breakage and fix right now. The other one is our network services. That is replacing old switches. We're starting to run into that where we're getting old. Our switches for the wireless are 11, 12 years old. They were part of a grant from the state a while ago. Their access points take more power. All the new cameras take more power, so we're starting to overload these switches in a lot of our network closets. So part of that 20,000 is a refresh plan where we keep refreshing those areas and then buying newer and newer models. Anything with the wireless, as Ryan put forth, that it is E-ratable. Right now we're at 50% reimbursement. When we do buy these Cisco gear, educational discounts about 42%. And then we get 50% reimbursement on anything we buy. That's access points, switches, even our main core switch. So the main core switch is on there. Our main core switch is 10 years old. In a network, just to explain it, on our main core switch, it is our heart of our entire district. It does our routing, it does our phones, bells, everything. Everything comes through that, and it's it can be a single point of failure, so we build a really big switch that has redundant power supplies, redundant supervisor engine. Everything's redundant on it. The one we have now has been running for 10 years, 24/7, 7 days a week, and we haven't had any issues with it. The problem you have after 10 years is there is no more parts for it, there's no more updates for it, it's becoming obsolete. So, and our plan is its 10th year, we'll replace it next year. Something like this, even with the new school, that'll just transfer to the new school. So it'll keep going for the next 10 years on that. The wireless access points and the controllers are our last two schools. In 2013, 2014, we used the wireless initiative where South Kingston received almost $1 million to redo our wiring. They did all of our access points. All those have been 10 years old. We've done the high school, Broad Rock. We just did Peacedale over the Christmas break. Ryan Richard was very good at, coming in over the break. We finished that. We finished the cameras. So that's a big uplift. The problem is if we're not upgrading every 10 years or so, the new laptops coming out won't connect to the old access points. And that's where we start getting, lagging in the classrooms and things like that. We're trying to design things to make the teacher it as easy as possible in the classroom. We rolled out ClassLink. Kim Thibodeau, my data manager, has been big with that. Russell's been great with that. Ryan Richard. And what ClassLink does is it makes it simple for like a first grader coming in. You come in, and when you log in, it goes to Chrome. They actually get a ClassLink window. And if they click on any of that, it's a single sign-on. So the teachers don't have to log them in to, say, Zern or any of these programs. They're automatically in and they're automatically up. So it simplifies for the teachers that get them as fast as possible. They don't have technical problems. Having the new laptops in there, they just work and the students are going faster. So it's been a great program, but it needs that wireless in these classrooms. And I think in a school environment, it's tough because we get thousands of other devices that come into. We subnet our network for that, but you can see that in a classroom, every student will have 3 or 4 devices on them. It will be a watch, or I had kids that had sneakers that had wireless on them. So it's an interesting concept when you see how much it's used. And we ramp up. We go from nothing to thousands of users in an instant. So you need that robust wireless, flexibility that they can go from room to room and things like that. We envision that for the new school where you'll go anywhere in the building and you'll be able to have wireless. Right now, the high school is so big and it is a nuclear bomb shelter in some areas. It's tough to penetrate through walls and floors. So we don't have access points in the hallways, so they can lose connectivity with their devices. Not in the classroom. Every classroom has access points in them, type of thing. So let's see. In the pre-K and 1, we had problems where in COVID we needed to buy things, so we bought a lot of iPads. That was the only thing available to us. Well, a lot of those iPads were used iPads, so right now they can't take the latest versions of the operating systems, and we're running into that now where in the classroom certain programs like Wonders and Zerns won't run on the old iPads. We've made a decision that we're going to go with laptops to keep everything common. With ClassLink, it's still touch for them and it's simple. So the dexterity of like a first grader won't come in effect where the iPad was a lot easier in the past for them to. It's something they're familiar with, something they work really well on. So that's part of that money is to start refreshing that and getting them up because we're running into those problems this year. We're going to try to fix the ones. We probably have about 125 devices that just got old fast on us with the latest versions 17 and 18 of the Apple operating system. The final one is our telecommunications. Our phones, we upgraded the phone server this last summer, we rolled all that out. It was an interesting concept, and when we did have an internet outage in the beginning of the school year, it was statewide. It was hospitals, it was the universities, it was most K-12 schools, and it was intermittent, it was up and down. And we kind of figured out that if you put everything on the internet, that nothing worked in your buildings. And it was scary that at least having, like, we still put servers in our domain for our phones, bells, and alarm systems and things like that. So if we do lose the internet, we can still have operational, people can call in, and to them it's transparent. Yes, in the classrooms, they won't have Google and they won't be able to do some things, but having a robust backup system to compare what we have would just be 4 or 5 times the cost. And we really don't lose the internet that much. Knock on wood, we did have a small outage today, but the heat was good today, so that's a plus. But besides that, that's, my budget is, I think, a lot less than last year. We ended the lease of the ones that we did during COVID, so that was very beneficial. We did a good buyout, so we still have those devices. They were only, they was their 5th year, so we're still using them at Broad Rock. It was a very, lucrative to do that than try to ship them back type of thing. So I think device-wise in our community, I think we're in a really good spot right now. So do we have any questions?
I have one question. It's more about software though, and it's, yeah, thank you. So my daughter went through the SK school system, and when she did, I became introduced to Google Docs, and so I transitioned over to that myself. Fast forward to being here on the council, and this is sort of just an sort of statement. So our computers here use Word. And also I've had problems using Google Docs at our library system. So this may not be pertinent tonight, but I think there's some room for us to maybe consider moving over to Google Docs at Town Hall or overall to sort of save some money and maybe have more agreement between all of between the kids here and the library system. Just a point.
I mean, it's a valid thought. I mean, we've wrestled with this. It was the Apple Windows debate and the Google and Windows device. I stayed with laptops. We're flexible enough that the students have Word. They have Microsoft 365. Students that are taking college courses through us, we give them a Microsoft 365 account. So
that's an upgrade then. It wasn't like that when my daughter was in school, so okay.
Right. No, so we've always had those capabilities. Sometimes the students don't ask us for those things.
Right.
But the teacher, Google Classroom is it's a powerful tool in the lower grades too. But the high school, trust me, I've had college professors come to me and that say that the kids don't know basic tabling in Excel and things like that. So you are right. We're flexible that we can do both here, but maybe that's a good discussion to think back that which one should we be going forward with. Like you said, Microsoft is still very powerful out in the world, percentage-wise, in colleges and in industry.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for coming up here tonight and speaking to all of us. Is there, in light of our recent, wireless breach for the state, when you and I had a conversation at South Kingston High School about internet security and our server security, does any of this have to do with that? Or is there any hardening of our system that you're going to be taking into effect? I know that we recently had a statewide initiative through RIDE for school district security, and so I didn't know if any of that was involved with your request.
That's mostly our operational budget. So we did an audit last November, December through a company that's called Seesaw. So it kind of let us look back at ourselves. It was a very powerful tool. We found a lot of things that we didn't know about, password protection, things like that. So a lot of our initiatives changed on that, where we needed to bring them up to speed on things. Two-step verification was big to teachers. I think it's scary if you lose. And right now, the big enemy is losing your credentials. Mm-hmm. And we've really stressed that to our staff, and that your credentials are more important than like malware and viruses. It's kind of switched around the top agent on that. So through that we've rolled out a lot of things. Mindcast, our emails all check through Mindcast. Anytime you open anything, Mindcast scans your documents. I had one the other day. I took a picture of the camera to send back, and it had a QR tag on it. It wouldn't let me send it out. It sent it back to me. So it's taken a while for our staff to get used to that, but it's worked. And Mindcast also has a training, so we send training videos out. We're doing it with our staff right now, and then it's going to go to the teachers. So they have to go through and educate themselves to be, it's all part of the NIST compliance of us, so we're there. We're hardening our devices. We're changing, and the big thing is that the federal government came out E-rates for our cyber grants, so I filed for that. So that's hopefully my last big step, big purchase. If we can get 50% reimbursement, would be that watching our network 24/7 and making sure things are safe all the time and visual into our network. That's the last piece we need. Besides all the other ones, I think we're in a really good space right now for protection on a lot of things. My staff might not agree with that when Mindcast disrupts what they're used to doing.
Well, there's growing pains, but it's it's better than being safe than sorry, right? Because
Exactly.
once you have a breach,
We've seen Providence, we've seen the States. So
That's right.
It's, those are the ones that'll keep you up at night.
those black swan events,
Right.
they really are. So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Okay.
Doug, can you address in a little bit more detail what the plan is to migrate hardware when the new school comes online?
Sure. We upgraded the high school with all access points. Those access points are probably good for 10 years. I'm hoping that we'll use those, say, in the hallways. And then in the new school, we'll repopulate all new access points, the latest and greatest. Wi-Fi 7's coming out. So that there's a whole different level of things. You bring up like new schools and old schools, a lot of the old schools' wiring can't handle, say, Wi-Fi 7 and things like that. But the new school, things like, interactive boards that we're buying and things like that, those last at least 10 years. Our plan is, we're working with the teachers on what they want to have for a classroom, how they want their classrooms. They're kind of used to 4 walls, but the new school might not have that 4-wall environment. So do they want it on do they want their interactive board on a cart? Do they want those things? So we're trying to work with them, but we'll still migrate, like the whole server room, we're going to keep going forward with what we want to do, but we'll build an all new server room with switches, but like big things like the main core switch will come over and things like that.
It'll transfer over
Yes.
to the
Yep.
new high school, so we're not going out and just buying all new.
Nope.
Okay. To follow up on Jay's comment, we had Lori Fox in here last night for her capital improvement program for the town, and she mentioned coordination with the police department. I assume this isn't a question so much as a suggestion that the school department also coordinate or discuss with the town and the police department with respect to security issues.
Right. I always go to the security meetings. I think we have one in a couple of weeks. So I work with the police officers, the resource officers. We talk about the cameras. We talk about the security of the buildings. I think Brian Mahoney's going to come up and talk about. We saw the ones in Georgia with the basically the badges that they use to locate. I've worked with that company for the past 2 months. I really like it. It's a system that they come in, puts it in, and it monitors. It could be at our ball fields. It could be anywhere. It's geo-fenced that if you leave and set it off, it won't work. But it's every day that the teachers could use it, where if they hit it 3 times, it's a silent alarm. It goes to your principals and your resource officer and lets them know to come to this room. I think it's a very affordable system for what it works, what it does on a lot of these things. And it's going to give some, even though I'm rolling the cameras out, and that gives the teachers some security, some feel of being safer. So those badges, I think, will be a good fit for them.
Okay. Last question. Did I understand you to say that some of the iPads that were purchased during the pandemic are going to be retired?
Yes, because some of those were used then, so they're almost 4 years old when we purchased them. Mm-hmm. So now they're 9, and they can only go up to version 15, and a lot of our software updated. So like Wonders needs either version 17 or 18. So that's probably all that was available during COVID time.
What happens to them when they're retired?
We could put them on .gov, but most of the time that they can't update, they're not worth a lot of money at all. So we get what we can for them. Well, it'll be like a batch, like in the auction environment that we put up for.
I was wondering whether they'd have any usefulness for the after-school program, even though I understand you're saying they're outdated.
Right, like the Johnny Cake Center, I know Robert Littlefield was helpful for us to, we had a bunch of machines that were in Wakefield that I just didn't want to throw out because we can't use them, but they can use them, so we have donated to them. They can't take my operating system because of licensing issues, but we went over, cleaned them up. I think they're taking them in a couple weeks once their building's up, so they can do an after-school classroom over there.
Thank you.
So, okay.
Good.
So my question, you started to answer, and I don't know if you're the right person or if it's Brian. So last year, we had a long discussion about notification of the call system. Is that what you're talking about with the badge? Or is Brian going to explain it to the whole community? Are you still in that process of going that way?
Yeah, it's changed so fast.
Okay.
The one we looked at, and we tried to post that multiple times. It's just an alarm system. And sometimes when you put just an alarm system in, I think we need these things, but it's not used every day. It's not something that they can use where the badges it's right there on them. It's no big button. It's not, so since I've worked with them almost 4 years, you start looking at the newer technology, and it's like, well, I think this is the way to go. And it's something that we're kind of leasing it for 5 years. And if any of the equipment breaks, they come in and fix it and take care of it. It's not on us. And then if there is an emergency, it locks down your building. It takes care of things. So it's just that technology's changed over the last 4 or 5 years since we pitched these things to the community.
So I'm not sure if I'm hearing you correctly. You are piloting this badge program now, or you've already leased it for 5 years?
No, we just got pricing for
Okay.
this. So it's something that we're going to work between the school committee and us to see, is it something we want? I've brought it to our security and the police. They've had videos and they've seen, so they know about it too. If we study like any of the shooting in Georgia, the police chief was holding that up. He said every teacher had one of these, and then it located them, so we knew where they were, and it was instant. And time matters. It's something we don't want to think about, and mostly in our community, but it for the final cost, the yearly cost, it could be a very good solution for us. And it's not a system that could be outdated in 4 years that we're throwing away. Hopefully it's a system that could keep going, and if not, something else will probably be cheaper and better out there.
So you're still allocating money towards a system that you haven't yet quite determined which one you're going to pick?
I think we put money out there for approval, but
Yeah.
we never pulled
That's
the trigger
fine.
on it. I mean, it took us almost 3 years to get the cameras finally in. It's,
And just to follow up, so the teachers all have badges would it be helpful, or do schools use it with the students?
If say it was a disruption in your class, you can just hit the button 3 times on your chest, and basically then it notifies on the phones or on the desktops of the principal and the secretaries, and they'll instantly know it shows the room, so they can just come there. So you don't have to get, it's a faster way.
I was thinking in terms of like students leaving the school, like if everyone wore a school badge, you would know.
You were not allowed to track the students like that.
No, okay. No one uses it in that way.
Yeah. We are not allowed to have any tracking on the laptops or anything on the students, right? That's the ACLU will get on us for that.
I mean, I just thought for the students who exit the school without supervision for whatever reason at any grade, I just was like, well, maybe if they had their badge, we would know which way they went.
Right. Yeah, but I think we're not allowed to do any of that. I think Middletown tried to do that with their backpacks, and they got in a lot of trouble.
Okay. Just checking.
Okay.
And can I ask one more question?
Sure.
I'm not sure if it's you or someone else, but at the point of you're still collecting the devices at the beginning of this? How's that working out? Is that still happening?
For the laptops themselves?
Do you mean cell phone, the cell phone or the
phones.
laptop?
Cell phones.
The under?
Yeah, the yonder bags, yep, we're still doing that at the schools where they come in every morning, they lock them in and things like that. The students are adapting pretty well on how to get around these things for their own use. Like they all have turned Siri on and they basically talk to their phones now in that yonder bag and put, play Spotify, play this song, and they have they're trying to use the laptops more to communicate. I have this product called Gaggle that watches them a lot, so it's been a little bit more on my staff because they get a lot more alerts now. So they're trying to chat through the laptops, but they're figuring out that we watch all those things.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions, school committee members? All right, thank you, Doug.
All right, thanks.
Of course, I hit the wrong button. I'm here for meetings almost every week, and I hit the wrong button on here. Hi, Brian Mahoney. Thank you for having me tonight, and welcome back, everyone, and to our new addition, to our town council, welcome. To speak further to the mass notification system line item that's on here that Doug has spoken about, to clarify, Deb, we did not go forward with that system we came to last year with. That was about $200,000. It was a great product, but again, like Doug spoke to, this could be implemented district-wide. It's been proven in Georgia, and I looked at some of the testimonials today. I think they had 80 or 90 school departments and municipal buildings on just their school side testimonials from their website. They do buildings all over the country of different sizes, shapes. One of the great things about this badge system, it would work with the current technology we have that controls all of our access doors. It would just be an attachment. A lot of products that were out there, teachers had to download apps onto their phone, and the more things you're doing, you're adding more areas for something to go wrong. This is a physical button, doesn't need to be charged, works for the whole school year. It would attach to employees' badges. You can also give badges to visitors, so or subcontractors. So if I had a subcontractor working on a roof and say a unit caught on fire, they'd instantly be able to hit this badge system a certain designated amount of times, and if you hit it 3 times, it'll go to a notification to administrators, nurse, front office. And if you hit it another designated amount of times, it actually automatically calls 911 and local police. So it has multiple functionalities, so you can handle on-site emergency and then also true off-site emergency need for police, fire, or EMS, all with one product. Another unique part of this product was, compared to other systems, it can geolocate anyone. So in the high school, 240,000 square foot building, 3 floors, it'll tell you where that badge, when it set off the alarm, was and who it's assigned to. So when the police would get the notification, they would be able to say, or EMS, there's an emergency, floor 2, and what the teacher's name is. So it's able to be that robust, whereas a lot of these technologies, someone has to be monitoring it, or it just sends a simple notification. This one is very robust in covering a lot of the issues you have in an emergency situation, or heart attack, accident, anything that could come up in the schools. So I'm going to go on to the next item that I have on the capital list. Replace chain link fencing at Peacedale Elementary School. The fencing around the new Bob Littlefield Peacedale playground, playfield sections, and generator all need some level of replacement. There's multiple types of fencing on the property, and the fencing needs to be replaced due to age, tree damage, vandalism, and plowing and weather-related issues over the years. A good note here, like Doug had touched on, we just finished all the cameras at Peacedale, so there is a camera system on there. So in the past, where we have had vandalism, where people have ripped down the fencing to access the playground or just decided to destroy our fencing, it all has camera coverage now. The next project is install exit signage at Matunic Elementary and West Kingston Elementary. This project was identified by Studio Jade's facility condition assessment in 2022. West Kingston and Matunic are currently up to code on all fire and safety related issues, but they have no generator for emergency power. There is an emergency battery backup system for exit signs and specialized lighting that would stay on in case of a power outage or emergency. But this project would go in, replace the older system, put a larger battery pack system in, and increase the lighting for longer duration if all the students had to gather in one area or hallways. And again, there is lighting there currently, but this would be an upgrade to those systems for safety and emergency situations with no power. Install fire alarm initiating devices, Peacedale Elementary. There's 2 line items you'll see on our capital list. One is install, and one is the actual material cost. So together they total $81,223. Again, this was identified on our facilities assessment by Studio Jade. This would replace old devices such as smoke detectors, sprinkler-based devices, heat detectors, and fire alarm pull stations. Installing GFCI receptacles at Broad Rock. Currently, with the school being 23 years, if I do my math right, old, the technology has changed, the amount of laptops, devices, touch screens, and the projector systems we have has changed. So we've run into issues where teachers and administrators have to set up rooms in kind of awkward positions or not to the best teaching ability because of power. We've tried to use power towers that I don't see any here at the moment, but different things to get around it, but we are legally not allowed to run extension cords or things like that, so this would be adding in different classrooms and spaces power outlets. Replace lavatory fixtures, West Kingston and Matunic. Again, this was identified on Studio Jade's Facility Condition Index assessment. This would replace the countertops, which would become damaged and stained due to soap and chemicals over the years, sinks that need replacement, and bathroom stalls will be changed out as needed. Each school has 6 boys' rooms and 6 girls' rooms, as well as some single stall use areas in our special ed department areas and the kindergarten classrooms. This replacement would take place in the summer to not displace the students. Upgrade and repair and replace soffit at Peacedale Elementary. Project also on our Studio Jade Facility Condition Index. Due to the age of the soffit, they just need some work at the Peacedale Elementary to keep the proper barrier underneath the roof line for moisture and for the elements and critters that like to make their way into the nice, warm, dry, safe schools. Custodial machinery. This would be to add a walk-behind custodial machinery to our fleet. This creates a safer work environment for the employees, increases in efficiency, and is needed to service our gym floors properly to keep them up to being a high level of play condition. We currently only have 2 in the district. One was bought 5 years ago, and one was bought 8 to 10 years ago. So those have become old quickly. So we were hoping to get a 3rd machine so that all 3 of our gymnasium floors and larger schools would have their own machine. District defibrillators. This would be to add any needed units. We are using the same units that the town also purchased a few years ago, as well as a battery backup for our units. One of the issues we've run into is the units with our security protocols in the buildings cannot log in for updates. So they try to send out a signal to get cellular signal for updates for live notifications that go to the AEDs, which also drains the battery a lot faster. So we have looked into purchasing battery packs for them. Next item, vehicle replacement. The fleet we have is continuing to get older. We are replacing 1 vehicle this year, and then next year we'd like to put in for another vehicle. This year we're replacing our box truck, which we've been out of service. It's been decommissioned for about 1.5 years now, and the next truck would be a plow vehicle, similar to what we have now, either a Ford or a Dodge 250 or 350 that could plow. Currently, we only have 2 plow vehicles, so we have to contract out a lot of our plowing services. And then the last item I have is repair parking lot at Broad Rock. This would be repairing edges and worn down areas of the front and rear lot. As you know, this Broad Rock site gets used all the time, weekends. There's a lot of soccer that goes on over at the fields. And just due to age and use, the parking lot has some edge damage. So, no one has any questions, I'll go back.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions? Good.
You know what I'm going to ask about first, right?
Which one?
The roof leaks at West Kingston and Matunic.
Yes. Yes. So
Where are we at with that?
Yes, so we do have a specialized contractor coming in. The areas of the leaks go back to when those roofs were replaced. I don't have the exact year off the top of my head. The roof sections of the primary wings at West Kingston and Matunic, which are matching schools, I believe it was about 10 to 12 years ago. They replaced a large section of it, but they did not replace the section where the metal roofing from the main part of the building comes into the primary wing of the building. So from the director previous to me, Russ Hill, to Bob DeRocha before him, to me now, there has been issues. We've, in my 6 years here, sent up our different contractors for years up to that area, fixed both schools' leaks, and then within a couple months, a pinhole leak comes back. So what we've done is through Garland Roofing, which is the roof systems we use, we've hired a specialist who's based out of New England to come and do a specialized test to be able to find exactly where this water penetration is coming in. Because 2 rounds of my staff, and like I said, every year we've spent money throwing money at a problem that hasn't been fixed in many years. So after the next 2 weeks of freeze, they're scheduled to come out, do the test at both buildings. Matunic's currently is more severe than West Kingston to pinpoint that, and then we'll go forward with repair.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good.
Thank you for the warm wishes. I appreciate that. What vendor are we using for the mass notification system?
The one we've been pricing out is Cetrix, Doug? Cetrix, yep.
Cetrix?
Yep.
Gotcha. These tags that can geolocate according to percussion, I guess, is the ability for tracking geofence to the schools themselves, or could they be tracked outside of the schools?
It's an outside repeater, so it's a piece of technology they'd put on our building, and we could choose. So you would not be able to go outside of the school. So once you take it off-site, it would be not used anymore. But if Curtis Corder playing field, we would have that geofence. So if someone left the high school and then they drove to the field, their badge would then be reactivated for that. So if there was an emergency there, they could hit the button and it would work. It wouldn't be, if you work at the high school, it only works at the high school, because we have a lot of specialists, administrators who go building to building. So anywhere that we implement this system, the badges would work.
Understood.
But not at someone's home, not at anything like that.
The anti-Big Brother in me wants,
No.
Yeah.
You need the repeater, so you need the pieces of hardware. So it's a master unit that they install, and then they put additional units in the hallways that just repeats the signal to the badges. Which again, one of the key points on my and Doug's side is it's an outside product. We go forward with it. We are not servicing it all the time. It will work based on the specifications that we're given, and it's not a piece of technology that we're going to be having to change out all the time. It's an outside piece of technology we're renting from the company.
Great. You were mentioning the 81,000, so that is the fire alarm with 36,000, and then an additional.
Yep, and then
45?
the bottom end,
And the
police
45?
fire alarm. Yep.
So that's that number right there?
Yep, correct.
Okay. Good to see that we're supporting our custodian. Shout out to the great John Carpinelli. Do you know what the level of cleanliness in our buildings is? For example, are we at level 4, moderately dinginess? Are we at a level 2? Do you know what we're at with that?
I don't have any reporting information on that. Some school districts do use a tracking system. They have outside vendors who come in and do tracking systems. I actually recently have been talking to another maintenance director in another district who uses robots to clean their hallways, but while implementing that program, they have an outside company that tests using the robots, tests their cleanliness and gives them a weekly and monthly report, but we don't have a reporting program.
So we don't use the APA standards for that?
I mean, we follow all health and safety guidelines and everything of that, and when it is brought to my attention, principals' attentions, teachers reach out to me. We work with our custodial union to, if there's areas that were missed or or problems in the building, we address those.
Great.
And we also use all green products, just as part of that line is, I don't know which year it was switched over to, but everything in our buildings has a green seal essentially on it. So it's environmentally friendly, student friendly. We've gotten rid of all the hazardous chemicals and worked with the state on that for old closets that have been open for 10 years. Everything in that closet was taken out, removed, and disposed of properly.
Great. I have no more questions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Brian, I got a few questions here. I'm curious, are any of the items that are listed in these fiscal year 26 projects, any of these included in the RIDE applications whereby expenditure would allow the town to receive reimbursement for those?
Yes, a number of these, such as the exit signage at Matunic West Kingston, fire alarms, receptacles, I believe was also on there, handrails, skipped over handrails, new handrails at Peacedale. But yes, many of these are on that.
So about half of this?
What was that?
About half of this?
About half, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So about 300,000, of which we expect to receive 150,000 upon completion of the project and expenditure? Is that how it works?
Yes, that's what.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you a little bit about your 6-year plan here, because after fiscal year 26, the numbers really skyrocket. Do those relate to improvements to the other schools?
Mainly, yes, that's mainly for improvements to the other schools.
And those-
also, what was it? What were you saying?
And those are specifically those items identified in the RIDE applications?
Correct.
So if we theoretically, we spend $4 million, we hope to receive $2 million in reimbursement.
Exactly.
And then it goes up from there, it looks like. Then the next year, $6 million. So then
Yes.
I guess naturally, my next question from there is, how do you anticipate being able to fund those expenditures in the years out as they really climb up?
That's a good question. And so currently what we have been doing is putting a number-based system on importance on all the items based off the yearly, knowing that in 1 year we may not be able to do $4 million worth of work due to financial restrictions or not having funding or no outside funding sources. So what we've done is year over year look at our most high priority needs and taken those from capital and kept,
Sort
either
of push
moving.
the other ones that you can't afford to later years, and then sort of reprioritize again for
Yes,
future years?
as we look at financial.
Just to clarify, this represents the ceiling, essentially, right? This is like the universe of potential projects.
Yeah.
There's really no feasible way for us to spend that amount of money
Yeah.
over the next 6 years. So, as Brian said, we'll prioritize them. We'll pull the projects that we think we can feasibly accomplish to the left into the fiscal year, fund it, through fund balance or through federal grant reimbursements, things of that nature. That's pretty
All
much
right.
how we've been
But at
doing it.
least an indication, desire to expend monies on improvements toward the other schools that were identified in the RIDE application.
Correct.
And
The ability to fund, I guess, in the future years is undetermined at this time, but at least it's there as a placeholder.
Exactly.
Okay.
Correct.
So when you get the price back on fixing the roof, both roofs, will those be added to this in the final telling from you?
That'll be a discussion we'll have to bring forward. Again, not knowing what the cost at this point would be. The cost for initial testing, we're taking out of operating budget, and it was not a significant, highly significant number. But we will have to come forward and either come out of the operational budget or a capital budget line item.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
So last year, and if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm not 100% sure I'm going to say it accurately, but you realized a surplus at the end of the year, and you used that money, can't remember the amount, for capital projects. Is that your intention again, and do you have a list of potential projects that you would identify and speed up so that that 4.7 outstanding comes, as you say, to the left?
You're seeing the projects that we're hoping to accomplish for fiscal 26, which we would use ideally if the school committee desires surplus funds to fund them.
But you have money you have a surplus.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
A couple $1 million-ish.
Yeah.
I look to Carol always.
As of the end of June 30, 2024, because the financial statements just got released, we have $4.4 million in our fund balance.
You have a 4.4
$4,486,000 in our fund balance, correct.
Okay. And I'm going to go over to my school committee. They know exactly what their best practice is and how much money is that you like to have in you have a policy and everything.
So we have to keep by our own policy 1 to 2%, but best practice is more like 2 to 3%.
And what would that be?
So Ryan, our budget is 65 million, correct?
63.
63.
The operating budget, 63.
The operating, yes, 63. So it's,
I don't know percent, what's 1%?
What's that equate to?
What is that?
Ceiling at 3%, $1.8 million.
And what's the 1%? 600,000?
630,000. Yep.
Okay.
So you only, for best practice, you should have about $1 million in surplus reserve. And you have 4. Okay. So you have $2 million right now in surplus that you could use to advance projects or use for something, correct?
Correct. So to give you the full picture, right? So we finished fiscal year, 24, with a $1.5 million surplus, which means our ending fund balance was $4,486,000. We're currently applying $1,161,000 in fiscal 25 of that amount currently. So that amount is not available for fiscal 26.
Okay.
So we have about $2.8 million available for fiscal 26.
And of that 2.8 million,
Yep.
you plan to use how much?
It depends. It
This
depends.
this is,
The projects you're seeing tonight are essentially the ceiling. This is the best case scenario for everything we'd hope to accomplish in fiscal 26.
2.3, is this what, am I looking at?
I just want to point out, there could be other operating expenses we'll need to fund as well. So it wouldn't necessarily just go to capital strictly. So we have to find that balance, and that's what we're working through with the budget process.
I don't have I'm just asking to understand. I don't have a back game of like trying to trip you into something. I'm just trying to understand.
Oh, no, I just
I'm
want
just
to point
saying-
out for clarity that it's not just, we could have that money that would just go strictly to capital. It could be other expenses that need to be taken care of as well.
That's good to keep in mind for everybody to understand. So,
Yes.
So your CIP for 2026 is 2.3 million? Is that the whole
so
thing?
Deb, just take a step back. If we get this CIP plan, there's almost $1 million in spending here that we want to do next year. So, with what we have over $1 million that we're doing 2025 plus near $1 million 2026, that's the $2 million that we have to spend. So that brings us back into the range that we need to keep in our fund balance.
Can you just say that again?
So if we currently have 4. If you go back to the first page, it shows that in this current year, we're going to spend 1.1, right, 1.16. So that's 1 million of that 4. What it's presenting now is next year. You add those two numbers up, the 4.8 and the 6.5, you get another 1.1. So between the current year and next year, that's over 2 million of that 4 that we plan to spend.
Is that how you got to the 2.8?
Yeah, correct.
So I just want to go through this slowly so we get it here.
Thank you.
So, end of fiscal year ending June 30, 24, you ended with a budget surplus. When I say that, I mean revenues in excess of expenses of about 1.5 million. That resulted in an unassigned fund balance of about 4.4 million, correct?
Just to clarify, technically, we have committed fund balance. We don't have unassigned fund balance.
Okay.
Because we're committed to
All right.
education, but that's just a point of technicality.
All right, so the
But
fund
yes.
balance was about 4.4 million.
Correct. Yep.
After the use of the fiscal year 25 capital projects, that'll reduce that balance by about 1.2 million down to 3.2.
Correct. We're also applying $427,000 to our operational budget. So the total available fund balance for next year is $2,897,000.
Well, let's walk through slowly here.
Sure.
After you apply the 400,000+, that gets it down to 3.15 million, approximately?
The 400 of just the technology piece? All right, I'm sorry, I'm confusing everyone. The total amount of proposed projects for tonight is 1.1.
Yeah, that's fiscal year
$1 million.
26. We're
Yes.
walking through fiscal year 25
Okay.
before we get to fiscal
enough.
year 26.
All right, fair enough. Yep.
So we end fiscal year ending June 30, 24 with a $4.4 million fund balance.
Yep.
We take 1.2, apply it toward fiscal year 25 capital projects.
Yep.
Then there's also 400 and change taken out of the fund balance. That brings us down to about 3.15 million.
2,897,000.
2 million?
Yes.
That math doesn't add up to me.
Yep, 4,486,741 ending
Yep.
fund balance. Take out $427,714 for the general fund, $1,161,000 for the capital fund. That total is $1,589,000. So 4,486 minus 1.5 million is 2,897,000. That's what we'd have available for fiscal 26.
You have, okay, that makes sense. I did the math, I did the elementary school math. So if you have 2.8 million in your reserve fund, encumbered, assigned, or whatever, you then are telling us for fiscal year 26, you're going to take out 1 from that, correct?
So
1.1.
1.1 for capital,
So you'll be at 1.7.
and then we have to decide if we want to appropriate funds to the operating fund again, like we did last year. That's where that 427,000 is coming from. We needed that for our operating budget. So we haven't decided that part yet, but it's available. And then if I personally don't like to get too close to that 1%. That's a floor that I don't want to get too close to. But it's not. We're not talking that we have a large cushion when the day is done.
I'm following
But
you.
that figure also doesn't account for a potential budget surplus.
Right,
At the end of this fiscal year.
right.
Fiscal year ending June 30, 2025.
Right.
Is there potential for that?
Yeah, there is, sure. The chances this year, less likely.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry.
the
Sure,
potential
sure.
not.
Well, we don't want
Yeah.
that to happen. We'll make sure it
So-
doesn't happen.
We don't
Just to
know
follow-
because we have a budget, but, we don't know what the political arena is going to do. We don't know what increases are going to happen and the price of everything. We would love to, we have really great fiscal managers that do a really good job, but that's a really hard question to answer.
So I just want to, can I just keep
Yeah,
one
go
more
ahead.
sec? So we got to 1.7 and then 1% is 650, give or take, whatever. So 2% is 1.3. So potentially, if you close this fiscal year without a surplus, because there's potential either way, you could be at 0, which absolutely never happens, but that's okay. You could have potentially 500,000 to either contribute to next year's operating budget, like you had some unanticipated costs that you transfer over, or you're going to potentially advance some other capital project, right? Because you probably don't want to always have that big fund balance. You want to actually work on the maintenance and address some of the problems, right? I'm just thinking.
It also depends on what we know is going to happen in future years. So, there is some long-term planning that happens. But yes, our intention is never to have a huge fund balance, but we have had years where we have unanticipated shocks. Outside tuition was one year, $1 million more than what we budgeted. There are those things that happen. That's why we have to have some fund balance. And I don't like to see it get too low just because if you need to be prepared for those kind of events as well. But never, it's a balance, right? You need enough, but you don't want to have too much that you don't get the work done that the district, the buildings, and everything needs. I totally agree with you.
And I think what we want to avoid at all costs is, and I think those, the professionals who guide us have seen this in other towns in the state, is school districts coming to their towns and asking for funds to get them through the end of the year. And we absolutely never want to see that happen, for us to be in a fiscal situation where we have to come back to the town and ask for additional funding to get us through the year. And I know you could probably I'm not asking you to name them, but I know you know there are towns where that happens, and has happened in recent years, where the school district is saying, we're out of cash. And we absolutely never want to even consider having to do that.
Fair enough. All right. Any other questions?
So just to summarize it, to make sure that I understand it, so best practice would be to have between 630 and 1.8 million. And we anticipate between what we're spending for 25 and 26 that we'll have about 2.8. So we do have a little bit more than the 2%, but we want to be cautious of the changing arena and time in which we live, because there's a lot of unknown things.
I think that the 2.8 only accounts for fiscal year 25 spending. Do I have that correct?
The 2.8 would be what we have available for fiscal 26 to apply to 26.
Okay.
Just one,
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay.
Before fiscal year 26 spending is accounted for.
Correct.
Okay.
just so your notes are good, Patty, 1% is 630,000, that's correct. 2% is double that, so it's about 1.3 million.
Oh, okay.
You said
I wrote-
1.8, that's
Yeah,
why.
I wrote it down wrong.
Yep, it's okay.
Okay.
3 is half of an 8.
Yeah, and it kind of looks the same.
Yep. So, there you go. Okay, so I think my question to follow all of this through was because I feel like I would rather, as a person here, invest in the school facilities. I would rather you have, not hold on to that. That's my personal view, is like these reserve things at the expense of what? Not doing the roof, not doing whatever it is. I couldn't even imagine what facility needs there are. They're all outlined, but that's where I feel like, don't hold that back, because it's so important that the actual structure be safe and ready for kids. We look at all of that, and
So if you go back and look historically, what we've been putting in our capital plans, we've been more these last current years than before. So we really have worked on increasing the effort on our buildings and facilities, maintenance, technology. I think it'd be good to go back and look at it on a inflation-adjusted basis to really see what efforts have been made. I think those analyses are important. But just on nominal dollar amounts, we really have done more recently than in the past.
All right. Brian, I got one more question for you. So when we look at the amounts spent on capital projects fiscal year 25, the approximate 1.163 million reappropriated fund balance, and then the federal grants there, 46,000. Any of those amounts spent on items identified in the RIDE application allowing us to get reimbursement?
For the 656 that I presented tonight, or outside?
Fiscal year
For
25,
25,
not
for
fiscal
this
year
Oh,
year.
fiscal year
26.
25 this year. I will have to take a look. I believe there is some on there. Certain ones that do not apply. We're doing the West Kingston parking lot this year. RIDE does not that 50% does not apply for parking lots. And that was not in the stage 2. But I can come back to you with that.
All right. But
Believe there
some
is.
portion of the amount spent fiscal year 25 are subject to reimbursement? We
Yes,
believe so?
and either way, we'd get at least our base reimbursement at 30% for
Great,
capital
and how
projects.
soon does the town receive the reimbursement? Like it's spent and the project's complete, how soon thereafter?
I'll defer to
My
Mr. Kovac.
understanding is for the high school project, it's after the high school is completed. So we get the housing aid for these repairs after the high school project is completed in total. But we have a previous approval from RIDE with other projects that we do receive the 35% reimbursement in housing aid for the fiscal year after that project is completed. So somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So we have a previous approval from RIDE, the SBA. We get housing aid for those projects upon completion in the following fiscal year. For any project identified in stage 1 or stage 2, those projects get reimbursed after the high school is completed. So the earliest would be fiscal 29 or 28, right? 28.
All right.
That's my understanding. Somebody please
Can I
correct me if I'm
just
wrong.
clarify this quick? Just want to make sure I understand. So those items in the RIDE applications which relate to schools that are not the high school, any amounts that we spend and complete prior to the high school being complete, we still won't get any reimbursement until after the high school is complete? Is that what you're saying?
That's my understanding for those approvals.
Okay.
Even just the base without the bonus? Like we couldn't qualify for the base and not get the bonus?
That's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. It's possible, like I said.
That's something.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's a good question. That I'm not sure.
And we have a building committee on Thursday night, and I'd be glad to bring that up to our experts and dive into that a little further. I think it's a great question of why, if we're not getting the funds back to 29, 35 versus 50% or 55%. But to give you an example, we just completed the camera project. That was about $120,000, and we will be receiving 35% back from that, on top of all of our other capital projects.
If I can jump in with a little bit more information, I think. Going back to when the school committee started with Phil Conti and Jade preparing the Phase 1 and Phase 2, the Council on Secondary Education approved the package December of '23. So it would make sense that if those capital improvement projects were part of that package, that you're stuck until the high school is completed as part of the package. But one of my questions, and it's more for everybody around the tables to think about, is what are we going to include that's part of your ordinary capital improvement plan that's going to come off that 150? Because that's what the package was that the council approved. The Council on Secondary Education approved in December 23 was the 150 million for everything that was in that Phase 2. So we're sort of borrowing from Peter to pay Paul in choosing our reimbursements. We're going to need to think that through carefully.
So I have a clarifying question,
Go ahead.
if you don't mind. So when you say, for example, that $150,000, I keep doing that tonight, sorry, $150,000 camera project, and we get the 35% reimbursement, we say we, right? So we, school committee, school district pays the 150 out, the reimbursement goes back to the town, correct? And I ask that for clarifying purposes as far as how you guys would know better than we would know when that money comes back to you, correct? So I think the right people to ask, it's a combination conversation because the money is spent on our side, but it comes into your side. So it would be hard for us to know when it comes back. I would assume Brian would know.
We get reimbursements from RIDE throughout the year. Some of it from existing school bonds that are on the books. When we pay the debt from the prior year, we'll get reimbursements on that. We also then get reimbursements from some of the work. So that is actually, as the reimbursements come in, that'll be discussions sometimes between the finance offices. Is this related to the work that was done, or is it debt service, just to clarify. But that is conversations we'll have on that.
So I just want to follow up on that quick. I think a great question, Brian, you already talked about it, to discuss the school building committee, asking the experts here is, when can the town plan to receive any reimbursement which relates to investments made to schools that are not the high school, but were items identified in the RIDE application? I think it's important to have an idea when we expect to receive reimbursements if we make those investments. If we only get it 5 or 6 years down the line versus in the fiscal year immediately following completion of the project, I mean, that makes a difference for planning purposes. So I'd like to know the answer to that.
Definitely, we'll send Left Field, Studio Jade, and Gilbane an email tomorrow on that.
Excellent.
So I can never tell. So I just want to, I think what Mike was saying was very interesting, and I want to make sure I understood it correctly. And I think, so my understanding is we currently have, when the original school bond failed, the stage 2 for the move to Curtis Corner, we still did
We went back to the drawing board and started.
no, we got some small projects approved, correct? No? I thought.
Yes, the necessity of construction, stage 2.
We did
from
that.
the Curtis Corner project. That part was approved, even though the bond had failed.
Correct. So there are some things in that list of things. Is that what you're,
That from the Curtis Corner has since passed. The deadlines were a few years ago
Okay.
on that. But everything that was in our new project, which is very robust, with Studio J's assessment, it goes through roofs, bathroom systems, every part of the building, the envelope of the building. So
okay.
the project list is very thorough
Okay.
for every building.
Okay, so that's like a separate thought in my head. So what I understand you asking about, Mike, was you're basically saying to the school department, when you choose to pick, you can choose, if you're picking, for example, say the Matunic roof was one of the projects in our approved stage 2, we're going to get 50% for the roof. But if they do that now, they're only getting 35. So when you were saying robbing Peter to pay Paul, saying don't pick from the list that we can get 50% reimbursement, pick from a list that's 35?
No, we would still get 50% for that. I think the question comes in is if we're doing it now, it needs to be removed from the $150,000. I was calling things $300 earlier today,
Okay.
so the $150 million bucket, right? So we have this $150 million project. If we take using our money now from our CIP and we take a project out of it, to his point, due diligence, make sure it's removed from this bucket and it's put in this bucket, we're still getting the 50% reimbursement because it's part of the original approval. It's just tracking that to make sure that's already been done and it's being paid over here. Is that?
That's what I thought he said?
That's part of the concern. The other is this is oversimplifying. There's a $150 million pot for these projects that were approved as part of phase 2. The reimbursable total was $116 million, and we get 50 to 52% of that. So as we're all, including you guys, we're all very concerned about what the bottom line on the high school project is going to be. And the closer that gets to that 150, we're going to max out. And that's the discussion that I want all of us to keep in mind is we're going to need to pick and choose. And to the extent that you have a fund balance, what we get reimbursed for that comes out of that is going to detract from or require more, put it this way, require more value engineering on the high school project.
I mean,
Does that make sense?
Yes, and to that point, our experts are doing a good job at that. They're making sure that, like right now with our value engineering, we're value engineering to the 116 for the high school, right? And so they are kind of keeping us honest with that so that we're not looking at the big 150 number, we're looking at the 116 number. So valid point. Thank you.
So are we saying that it may make sense to only seek reimbursement for the high school project, because if we seek it for other schools, it may eat into the amount that we're eligible for reimbursement for? No?
No, because those are all they're included separately though.
So the high school's up to
it's worth
116.
a clarifying conversation with all of us, with our OPMs and with Studio G, just to make sure we're not speaking out of turn.
Okay. So the high school's up to 116. That's the amount by which we'll get the reimbursement. In addition to that, we'll be able to get reimbursement for investments made at the other schools, which were identified in the RIDE applications?
That has been my understanding. Brian is nodding at me, so.
So this is very obvious. So the better we are with stewardship of the money, we can leverage it to do the other repairs. That's why we're trying to be uber careful with the high school coming in closer to the 116. It may cost 125 to build the high school. We would have to then build a 125 high school, but RIDE's only going to give us 52% of the 117, 16, whatever that number. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
And it still may not be
Okay.
enough to
So the
address
remaining
repairs.
amounts of the bond, those amounts will not be subject to reimbursement. Let's say the high school costs 125. Reimbursement up to 116. The remaining 25 to get to the 150, if we spent that on the other schools, we won't receive reimbursement for that. Okay. Got it.
One last thought, putting my accessibility hat on, when you're looking at technology, this page right here, technology, and you're looking at facilities and maintenance, the really important parts are not the giant font that says technology or total FY26 plan projects. It's really the table. So when we're designing things in the future for the audience trying to squint and look at that, could we be mindful of that and really try to put the pertinent information bigger? And, for formatting wise, a quarter of the page does not need to say technology, right? If the public is trying to squint and look at this, it would be better if we had bigger font, a bigger table, and just something to be mindful of, because I have perfect vision, thank God, but a lot of people don't. And so if we're trying to have transparency and accessibility for everyone, it's something to be mindful of in formatting and design.
Agreed. I'm not going to look at who put the presentation together. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus.
Nobody.
But I agree with you.
But just mindful overall,
No, agreed.
right?
Agreed.
Well,
That goes all, like you said, all the way around. It's every expense report ever that is presented is usually.
Absolutely, and when folks can't see, it's better to try to put the pertinent information. So just a thought for the future.
well, to be very transparent, this is not available to the public unless they're at the meeting because it's not attached to the agenda. It just came out. So they'll have to wait to see this later. So they're looking at if the camera is actually on the screen, but who knows? Who knows where the camera ever is? So, what?
It is on the school
It's on the
committee
school page.
board docs currently.
Thank you.
So they can't get it. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Go ahead.
I'll wait.
All right. Any thoughts, council members, school committee members, before we open it up to the public? All right. Thank you, Brian. Okay. Anyone in the audience who would like to speak on the matters talked about tonight, I invite you to come on up.
What?
This is why I want to see 22,000 voters voting, not 7,000.
You could turn on your,
I don't know if I'll need to, but anyway, this is going to be short and sweet. Facilities, I'm all for facilities, getting them done. If we take care of our buildings, we don't have to build new schools, okay? We don't want to let the facilities go so far that our only option is to build another school. So that's that facilities operating budget thing we play. So anyway, yeah, I wasn't really planning on speaking, but I did put out an email today for the council to take a look at, and I would really appreciate it, not tonight. Let's look at it, let's get the numbers, let's get the transparency in front of this, in front of us, in front of the taxpayers, and let's see what we can do, because as the council has been talking about, and we're looking at all of these numbers and the millions of dollars, we need to find money, and it just can't be on raising more of the property taxes. So anyway, that's short and sweet. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
There's a long line tonight, Brett.
All right. Any other thoughts?
I do. So
Go
so this CIP, will this transfer over into your budget that you approve and much like us in the town council, the CIP is the first year of the next fiscal year's budget?
Correct.
Okay. And Carol said this is fluid, you haven't yet approved it, things may change between now and February 14th?
So we don't expect the CIP to change.
Okay.
This was done thoroughly with our technology and maintenance facilities experts. So, however, the rest of the budget is still in the beginning phases. Yep.
And your budget is due to us on Valentine's Day?
Aren't you lucky to see us on that day?
It's a lovely day, right? It's a lovely day. That's a Saturday, so it's a Saturday. So, okay. That's it for the budget, I guess.
If I can ask one more question, this is more generally about the budget. Do you know where we stand with the hold harmless policy being eliminated, how is that going to affect state aid, aside from the potential budget deficit at the state level?
Yeah, so, okay, Brian's got this.
Okay.
All right. So fiscal year 2025, we received an offset of $298,767. That amount should shrink next year to $83,075. So that's a loss of $215,692. And then in 27,
it's
that
going
goes
to go
to zero, is our current expectation. Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
I just one last question. Studies have shown that increased attendance by students correlates with higher test scores on RICAS and other assessment scores. Is there any funding for, attendance initiatives in this?
Not
No.
the CIP.
That wouldn't be included in the CIP. We are taking advantage of technology tools that are working through our student information system currently, and working with both the student information system as well as wireless providers, as well as tools that are available to the district through the state. But in terms of in this budget, no, there would not be in the CIP, and that's to be determined. We are seeing nice decreases, so increases in attendance and decreases in
Chronic absenteeism.
And it is a point across all of our schools, and all of our principals and admin council are working up with that as an initiative. However, in most cases, we are using local tools facilitated by Mr. Snow and his department to be hands-on directly with principals and deans.
Thank you.
I know additionally, the governor has had Project 365, and the goal of that in the first year was to increase attendance. And then I think the second year is on the math scores. So I think we've been partnering with the Johnny Cake Center. So Jay, I'm not exactly sure how those programs work, but that's the way that they're being run through. Right?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm just going to bring it up again. I brought it up in December about the graduation rate being 90%. We talked about it. Remember? Oh, you weren't here, Carol. But yeah, so I just thinking about it all the time, because, for example, Charahoe is several percentages higher, probably like 94-ish. In Narragansett, it's better. My question, I wonder about it because with a 90% graduation rate, that means about 20 students annually don't graduate. So it feels like a lot to me. And I'm just curious if you've looked into, is it because our best students are migrating to other schools and helping out in other, right? So I would want to know why that's 90%. Is it a learning issue, or is it because all of these students are migrating to Narragansett or North Kingstown or whatever, and then the college-bound students are exiting, and that's what the population is left. So I don't know if there's any interest in doing an exploration, but I think the community might be interested in that piece of information. I don't expect an answer. I just want to put the topic out there again.
No, that's fine. And so I'll resend what I had sent out after the last meeting in case it was not received. I'll need to take a look at the screenshots that you were sent in terms of which ones that they were. So longitudinally speaking, our graduation rate is around the average. However, I do agree in that in many cases when we have any of our students, regardless of whether we label them the best and brightest, I think they're all the best and brightest, they are going to positively increase our schools or the other schools, the receiving schools, their graduation rate, especially if they're interested and motivated, and conversely, and unfortunately, in some cases, for students who are not making the grade in CTE programs, they have the ability, the receiving district has the ability to end that enrollment and send students back. So they get to retain only the students who are making that adequate progress as well as meeting behavioral guidelines. Each school is different, but I would venture to assume that in terms of motivated students who are involved in a program, hence why we are developing our CTE programs and making sure that students are safe, engaged, and future-focused. If we focus in on that, we're going to see an increase in our graduation rate. Relatively speaking, I believe, the high of the last 14 years, and I'll resend it, was around 95%, and actually with a low prior to the pandemic of 89%. And so we historically run, or South Kingstown High School has historically run on a 4-year graduation rate, and it will change based on whether we're looking at a 4-year, a 5-year, or a 6-year composite rate. That will fluctuate with the cohort. So I'm happy to resend that or make the link available to the dashboard that the Department of Education has put out in their data dashboard, and they have graduation rates, and you can do comparisons across as well as with various subgroups. That is all publicly available.
That's what I was looking at. So I saw that. I saw
Okay.
a screenshot of that. And so I hear what you're saying. I still think about it. I think when I said this, there's still 20 students who are left behind. I think that's when Paula got up and talked about her concerns. So we should care that 20 students annually don't graduate.
They may not graduate, however, depending on if we're looking at the 4-year rate or the 5-year rate or the 6-year rate, we do want to take a look at it, and I understand. We do want to take a look at that and make sure those students aren't left behind. The core piece that we want to make sure is that students leave with a diploma, and that does change. And in many cases, students, it's okay. We need to say to students who are experiencing hardship that as long as you leave with that high school diploma and having open doors, we just want to see you graduate. Do we want to see people graduate? We can have students graduate early in early enrollment programs. Do we want to see that? Absolutely. Do we want to see it in 4 years? Yes. Do you want to see it in 5 and 6? Absolutely, as long as they go with that graduation rate, as long as they go through. And so those students, again, each one is going to have various ones. So those 20, in many cases, still are retained in school, not even by necessity, but by the moral purpose behind them.
I just want to jump in real quick, and I want to caution the committee. This is not on the agenda, so I think we're treading on, shaky ground here having this discussion, and so we'll just want to make sure us on the committee don't respond. And I think it's a worthy topic, absolutely, but it's just not on the agenda tonight.
Sorry, passionate.
However,
Paula, go ahead.
I do invite you to have this conversation at another time. I think it would be very good for all of us to have the conversation at another time.
I do. Right. I just want to make sure that we're putting forth the correct numbers about kids that are not graduating. And I'm looking at the RIDE report card for 23-24, and our graduation rate is 93.5%. Last year it was 92.8.
With all due respect to all of you sitting up there, that is none of what we have been talking about for the last 5 minutes is on this agenda, okay? So again, I will invite you to have a conversation with the school committee and any of the administrators to have these questions answered. But tonight, it's not that time.
So I disagree
Please,
with that.
please.
Just hold on one sec, Paula. I totally want to say, I wasn't asking to speak to the school committee. I was reminding of the topic. I began by saying, I just want to remind you. And then the superintendent said that he sent something. I don't see that in my inbox at all. So maybe I deleted it. Maybe it was sent. I have no idea how it was sent. No one else is acting like they received something. So, no. Okay. So I didn't want it to be a conversation. I just wanted to remind the superintendent and the school committee that it's something that I care about, and I know you all care about it, and I know that it matters. So I just want to say, can we keep it in the forefront? I didn't intend for anyone, and it sounds bad to talk about it, but I just wanted to remind the superintendent that we care about it and it matters. Because all of it does fit into the plan for the school. If we have a beautiful new high school, we can be competitive, we can attract, but most importantly, you say all the time, we can retain. So it is related to the topic, because without a new facility, we're not going to retain any students, and that out-of-state tuition is going to go.
You're right. It all goes down to educational plans, but we're much further constrained on what we are allowed to talk about without having an open meeting violation. The rules, the general, the state of Rhode Island's rules for school committees are more strict than they are for town councils. I wish that we were able to answer people back when they came to the podium, and we're not. So we just need to respect the rules so that we don't end up having some sort of violation.
And I'm going to say this, we have always had budget meetings with you for as long as I've been participating. You can either bring counsel or not. We don't even have our counsel here. But it does fit with the topic, because like I said, graduation rates, we're talking about the high school, we're talking about renovation. We've had many conversations. So I'm not going to let it not be talked about.
Point of order, Mr. President. Point of order.
Yeah.
All right, I just
Point of order,
want to
Mr.
get things
President.
back on track here. You know, reasonable minds can differ as to what words say on a page. I think we had some good discussion. Some of us don't feel comfortable going down that route. I think it's a good point to just stop talking about that stuff if we don't feel comfortable. I think we've sort of reached an end here. We've had good collaboration, good discussion. It's been a good meeting. I mean, this is a good point to sort of end. If anyone has any final thoughts, I invite you to speak now. Go ahead.
Did we do status of the school facilities plan, item D and item E?
Do you have anything to discuss in regards to that? High school project.
I didn't hear anything on that.
No, in terms of our next step, we do have a building committee, a very important building committee meeting on Thursday at 6:30 in these chambers, where, according to our agenda, we will actually be looking to take action in order to approve the schematic design of the high school in order to bring to RIDE or to send to RIDE for approval. And I also believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that we will also be getting the schematics of Curtis Corner and the athletic fields.
All right.
I just want to correct
Please.
on that. We're not going to get the
No.
schematics for
I'm
that.
sorry.
It's just, we'll get a quick update. We'll see the schematics closer to the beginning of February for the athletic fields.
Okay.
So regarding that plan, schematic plan, when it gets submitted to RIDE, does it come through the entire council as we never got this far in the other stage 2 process, so a lot of things got to the council and we were voting yes or no and moving it on or not. Will this be does anyone know the answer to that?
Because this is just a schematic design component, it's just we're basically going to RIDE and they're going to say, okay, you're following what you submitted for stage 2, and they'll give us like, okay, keep going. It's not a stamped, like, okay, we need town council approval, we need school committee approval, like we had to in the past. It's not that type of step. This is just strictly, this is where we are. These are where we've gotten with the schematic design, and it allows us to move into design DD. I can't remember what DD stands for. Development design or development and design. But it's not one of those hard and fast major milestones that would normally have to go through all the bodies. This is just a quick, okay, yep, run it by RIDE, make sure that we're following our stage 2 plans.
So I guess my next obvious question is, when would be the next time the project comes to all 5 members of the council for some sort of a vote? And I hate to put it on you, but do you know?
I can answer that question on Thursday. I wouldn't be able to do it off the top of my head right now. I wouldn't want to be wrong.
Okay.
So that's another component that we can make sure that we get clarification on Thursday at our school building committee meeting. And your town manager and your deputy town manager and your CFO is on our school building committee.
Right.
So they can help with that.
I appreciate, because I was going to say, I would like to know at every juncture that our body of 5 will be weighing in some way on the project, when those milestone steps are. It's a $150 million project, which we know we need. I just want to make sure that we're responsible for that side of the paying for it with the taxpayers, that all 5 of these people's eyes are doing what's their due diligence. So I'd just like to know where our role of involvement is. And maybe Luke knows because he had that big grid, but I want to know when it's coming back to us.
No, I know. I know the answer. We've always included you. We've never excluded you. We never will. So the recommendation I would make to the school building committee is the consultants that we pay good money to be at these meetings whenever these topics are up. We've never excluded the council from these discussions. We never will.
So is there an item where we would be required to vote before it gets passed to RIDE? That's the simplest question.
I don't know that answer.
Yes, but that's not this. I think that's kind of the.
I heard you, so when is the next this? That's my question.
And I have to find, we need to get the right answer instead of just making something up. I'd rather have like a definitive, do I have, and it may not be, they may not be able to give us February 14th, right, today, but they may be able to tell us that will be coming at the next phase when the DD design phase is up, and that will be approximately May or whatever. But let us get I'll get that clarifying information and that schedule. We tend to push them for schedules and deadlines, and they kind of push back a little because things are so dynamic and ever-changing. But we have the roundabout time frame, but we will make sure that, and again, like we did the last time, that we try to get you the information ahead of time so that you can read through whatever needs to be read through, so that we're not pressing you for, here's the information, make a decision. You know, exactly. So we'll make sure we have that mapped out.
There's a new business item on for the 13th for the council to weigh in on some of these discussions.
Okay.
That's what I was going to ask about. When we met in December and viewed with the consultants the different value engineering projects that they were proposing, my understanding was they were going to come back in January asking us for a vote. One suggestion...
That's the 13th. We're doing that.
The 13th. So that's next week. One suggestion to both the school committee and school building committee is, I personally would like to hear whatever recommendation there is from both bodies about those projects before I have to vote on them.
All right. Go ahead.
So I, unfortunately, on Monday, our meeting, I won't be, I have a family thing that I'm attending to on Monday. Just letting you all know, there are a couple agenda items that I asked about. If you could just kindly push them to the next meeting for me, not the school vote. I understand you might not be able to do that, and I'm not asking that, but it was about traffic. It was about the ARPA funds. Yes, if you could just kindly table them one more time, because I won't be there. Because
Even the ARPA ones, or?
Well, we can't commit to you now as to
Correct.
what the result of that vote will be.
I'm just
but
telling
we'll
you.
take it into consideration.
Kindly consider my request. I just want to put it out there publicly, because that's this school vote is going to absolutely happen. If it has to happen, I accept that, but the other ones are actually my questions, so.
Yep, understood, got it. Hey, Jim, will the use of the PAYGO funding, will that be a vote had on the 13th?
Definitely be up for discussion.
Okay.
As far as a vote, that's yet to be determined.
Got it. All right, thank you. It's going to bring us to the end here. Good work, everyone. It's been a good meeting, and we look forward to continue to working together in this budget season. So, thank you. Everyone have a good night. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Good evening.
Bye.
Oh, I never saw this.